Call meeting to order. First on the agenda, pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Revenue.
That was left over, I guess.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, presentations. EDC.
Conrad. Conrad Winslow is our chairman of our easy for you to say, Economic Development Committee.
EDC. On behalf of the Economic Development Committee, good evening. Since I stepped into this role as chair in January, we decided it would be a good idea to do a regular check-in in the form of a biannual report, independent from any recommendations, specific recommendations we make to the select board, just to keep you abreast of what we're talking about. So this is the first of these biannual report documents, which you should all have. So the first point here, this sort of subcommittee, Ruben was the lead on, and I don't need to go into that because you're going to hear more about that in just a couple of minutes. But it almost goes without saying that from an economic development point of view, better access, more affordable access to high-speed broadband internet is a boon for economic development. So it's something that we would really be in favor of. So the second point, Waldoboro's town business section updates. Anne's been really great about looking at the surrounding towns' websites. Some towns have really robust web pages. Some have very kind of bare bones web pages having to do with business development. Some towns even show real estate listings. Some towns say, you know, here's exactly the land use ordinances that you need to be aware of. Some go into more detail about those points. Some of them have direct links to ways to finance your business, these sort of things. So we looked at a bunch of these and decided on some points that seem more important, some that seem less important. And then Anne drafted a couple pages of content, basically pointing out, you know, our planning department, some of the land use ordinances, some statewide links to financing options, these sorts of things. And the next step is we're just going to do a draft of a, you know, welcome to Waldoboro. You want to do business in Waldoboro. Here's what you might want to think about. Here's who you want to talk to. And then we're going to review that and then we can publish it. So that's a nice bit of action that we can move on pretty quickly. The next one has to do with workforce housing. Now, this term keeps getting thrown around and a lot of people don't fully understand what that means. It's kind of a term of art that usually means 80 to 120% of the median income for the area. And that's affordable in the sense of like you're spending up to 33% of your income on housing. So obviously there's a lot of interpretation involved in this term, but broadly speaking, workforce housing is saying unsubsidized, but still affordable housing. It's not luxury housing and it's not Section 8 housing. It's if you're working in the area, can you afford to rent or buy a home in the area? And in all likelihood, this is the greatest impediment to economic development in this area. People just can't find employees to fill spots in the area because there are no apartments to rent, you know, at the beginning, at the entry level, and then it's very hard to find affordable houses to buy. The Rockland Savings Bank closed, and they cited this exact reason. They couldn't find someone who was living here to work at the bank. So we started talking about what can the town do, what from a municipal point of standpoint can actually be done to help alleviate this. I mean, there's a lot of structural issues at play here, some at the state level, some at the federal level, where we can't do anything. But one that we came back to was Waldoboro has permitted ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and is revising some of those codes in the land use ordinance this year. having to do with ADUs. And the question would be, what if the town wanted to incentivize accessory dwelling units for workforce housing? Is that something that the town would want to do? We at this point are not making this recommendation. We just started to research what could be done, what sorts of options. We really feel that this is a kind of all hands on deck situation. So we're just trying to figure out what are the options here. And the news, what I'm showing here is that if Waldoboro wanted to, it could actually, using TIF money, for instance, incentivize the creation of units of housing for long-term rentals. In other words, not vacation rentals. You could find ways to incentivize long-term rentals or rentals specifically for people who are working in the area. Some other towns in the country have done this. Durango, Colorado, for instance, has a really targeted program, and they lay it out on their website. They say, we're trying to create 10 units this year. We have this amount of dollars, first come, first serve. They had a kind of a block grant program to construct a new, basically garage apartment. And then you'd have to come back to the town and show that somebody is working in the area. Simple as that. And then you'd get your rebate at the end of the year. So these sorts of things could be done. And currently we're not tracking ADUs, but we could track the use of ADUs as a town. This is a step that could be taken. So like I'm saying here, I'm not recommending this. I'm just bringing it to your attention that there are actions like this that could be taken to help incentivize workforce housing, but also disincentivize vacation rentals. If we did a survey and we found that Airbnbs were just taking over and they're swamping the stock of housing that could go to long-term rentals or workforce housing, you could actually disincentivize short-term rentals. That's another course of action that could be taken. Not recommending that either. I'm just bringing to your attention some of the options, some of the courses of action that could be taken. So that's kind of a broad overview of some of the conversations we've been having around housing. And then finally, we wanted to go back to these visioning report, downtown revitalization master plan, and the bike pedestrian plans from 2010, 11, 12, and look at a lot of these items that just vanished. And what are some of these things that might still be relevant, things that we could do in the near term? The goal here is what low-hanging fruit is available to us. In other words, putting advertising or flags on light poles, painting trash cans. I mean, I'm not saying anything specific, but affordable near-term actions that could be done to increase foot traffic in the village, increase attention, spur more economic development in the downtown village. And Max is going to be involved in organizing a downtown forum. So what we're doing this month is we want to pull out a few ideas that were suggested in these documents from 2010, 11, 12, and then bring them to the downtown forum, have a conversation with downtown stakeholders, and see if we can come up with a specific recommendation to the board. In other words, maybe it's the most important thing that we can do in the next 2 years is signage, for instance, robust signage to the village. That might be one course of action. Point being, what can we do not in 5 years and 7 years, but what can we do in the next year? What can we do in the next year and a half? That's pretty much it. If you have anything that you'd like me to take back to the committee, I'm all ears.
Thank you for this presentation. I think it's great. And I think I vaguely remember what happened back in 2009, 10, whatever it was, the downtown plan, and it's definitely something that we need to do. I think we have a little bit of a turnover on stakeholders in the village. And I see it every day now, maybe because I moved to South Waldoboro. Before I was in North Waldoboro, so I didn't go through the village as much. Right now I go through the village every day, at least twice. And I see the activity and it's exciting. So I really like to see that activity down there continue, and what you guys are doing. I watch your meetings on YouTube.
Oh, great.
And I kind of hear what you're doing and kind of gets me a little excited.
Good, good.
Takes a lot to get me excited.
Have you ever focused on Old Route One? Former select board members that I served with, we looked at turning Old Route One into a business Route One.
Oh, I see, like
There's a
West
lot of
Main Street going
develop-
up.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of property up through there that's not being utilized. There was a subdivision up there that never developed, that never got sold or anything, and
Uh-huh,
you know, possibly a warehouse or places, distribution centers up there that they come right off Route One, they're half a mile off Route One, they got, you know, warehouses and potential stuff like that. There's plenty of woods up there that just,
It's
nothing ever happens.
it's a good point, and that might be something where if we decided to. I'm not sure if the town wants to get into this, but if the website wanted to say, look at this real estate, look at this real estate for business opportunities. I'm not sure how
That's, I don't know if it's
Gotta be
zoned for business, but it should be, you know, if that's what you want to do as a economic development.
right,
Because I believe we talked to the sewer district when John Fancy was here, and that'd be all gravity fed sewer.
okay,
So
okay,
it wouldn't require a pump station or anything like that.
yeah.
You could run sewer up there.
We'd love to talk to Max about some of those specific lots that you're talking about. I think I know, I remember
Yeah,
seeing,
they're right up, fit within a quarter of a mile, a half mile from Route One, quarter of a mile, so down on the right.
right,
You know, to the right, there was a subdivision. I can't remember, it was 4, 5, 6 lots.
and then it just wasn't developed.
Nothing will ever happen to it.
Yeah, okay. That's something that we could take back. I know one of the suggestions, one of the points of conversation last meeting was about a kind of open air market. Not a farmer's market once a week, but more of a kind of an open air market that would be 7 days or 7 days a week, and it would be easy for you to open a stall, say an easy way to get into business without having the overhead of brick and mortar or setting up a big store. But could you, if you have something to sell, you know, some craft thing, you could take a booth at a space like this. So you know, this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy because we can't recommend specific businesses. We have to kind of step back and say, how are we encouraging development without being too heavy-handed about it? On the other hand, you do kind of want to say, please, something here, something here.
I just want to say, I like the idea of what can you accomplish in the next year? What is the low hanging fruit? That makes when I attended, I think one of your first meetings as chair. I just thought that was the theme, was like, what can we get done now?
Yeah,
And I think that's wonderful. And I think too, engagement with the Waldeboro Business Association is key. Because, you know, they're stakeholders. A lot of businesses are stakeholders in that whole downtown area. But I love the idea of like, let's get something done and let's get it done now. And I am excited to see what Anne came up with for the website.
yeah, we look forward to sharing that. Well, I'll take that point and I'll just try to emphasize that, you know, what is something that can be done this fiscal year? That doesn't cost $500,000, something that's inexpensive and signals to people who are coming through the village, oh, something's going on. You know, and again, I don't want to recommend right now, I don't want to speak for out of hand, but there are a number of things that could be done to show people that, you know, there's a new era.
Flower pots.
Flower pots, sure.
I'm meeting with the flower, with the garden club tomorrow morning, so.
You know, I talk to people that, you know, that I know that come through Waldeboro, they drive through Route One, they have no idea we have a downtown.
Exactly. And this is, this is my opinion. I'm not speaking for anybody else right now. I believe that the number one thing is signage. I think that we need to have good signs for parking and for orientation, directing people into the village. I mean, it's funny because you don't notice Waldeboro Historic Village until you're filling up your tank at Irving. Suddenly you look up and you're like, where's the Waldeboro? There's this little sign, Waldeboro Historic Village, you know, this sign. And you would never notice it. Anyways, so thank you.
I think it's great. I think like as a town, I think the workforce housing is gonna be something vital that we've gotta do, because we've lost out ourselves on hiring police officers and other people because they can't find a place to live in Waldeboro.
Mhm.
So,
Affordable housing.
yeah,
Yeah.
something affordable, yeah.
Yeah.
keep people here.
Yes.
This is super tricky because as I indicated, you got to balance individual liberty with what are the needs of the community here. And I'm not here to recommend that you clamp down on vacation rentals, but I will point out that yes, it's a great way to pay the property taxes, but it's taking away units of housing that are desperately needed right now. So everything is a balance. All right. Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm here for public comment, which is down the path, but it's about this topic, so I don't know if it would be better now.
I'd wait till public comment.
Okay.
All right, are you ready for broadband?
Yes.
It's the only thing that gets me excited. So I got you guys a one pager. And illustrating what's going on, what's been going on. We got some extras for anybody left in the audience.
I'm tired of the broadband.
So my name is Evan Gudkowski. I'm the broadband infrastructure consultant for Coastal Maine Regional Broadband. This is a mouthful. Coastal Maine Regional Broadband is a regional partnership of the Maine Connectivity Authority, and it's administered by Lincoln County. So I consult for all of the municipalities from Knox, Lincoln, and Saginaw counties. Just to give you guys some background, the original grant awarding agency for fiber projects in Maine was Connect Maine, which was absorbed by Maine Connectivity Authority in 2021. Between those agencies and the federal NTIA, about $150 million worth of funding has gone toward broadband infrastructure projects that have connected over 79,000 households and businesses. To give you an overhead of what's going on locally in the region, LCI, which is Tidewater Telecom in the Damascotta area, and Lincolnville Telephone in Lincolnville, Appleton, Hope area, has received grants to build their network out in Alma, Bremen, Bristol, South Bristol. Jefferson was not part of their original territory, but they got that through an NTIA grant, and Newcastle, Union, Hope, and Appleton. To your north, Washington and Somerville, and then out to sea, Monhegan have received grants to construct municipally owned networks that are being built by Axiom. And also privately funded construction has occurred in Warren by TDS, Thomaston, Rockland, and Camden by GoNetspeed, which you may or may not know as Otelco. And in Rockland, Rockport, Owl's Head, Thomaston, South Thomaston, and St. George by Fidium, which is Consolidated Communications. Everybody's got two names in case you haven't noticed. Charter, Spectrum, whoever. Everybody's got two names.
They are.
Yeah. The current work's in progress, so I'm on the Wiscasset Broadband Committee as well. We've been working with Dresden and Woolwich since 2021. In 2023, we applied for a program called Connect the Ready to build out fiber in those three towns. Ultimately, they weren't awarded. There were just too many higher need people on the totem pole. Which leads us to where we are now, the county funding. Lincoln County has approved, you probably are aware, 1.5 million from ARPA funds to go toward infrastructure projects. To date, only 80,000 has gone to South Bristol, which was a match, 60,000 to Newcastle, which was also a match, and 20,000 to Monhegan. That leaves just over 1.3 million in funding that hasn't been allocated yet. And the original offer from the county program was to match any amount up to 100,000 that anybody that wanted to apply for a grant. So, which brings us to the current opportunities and why I'm here. Consolidated, which is Fidium, has approached the towns of Wiscasset and Dresden, Woolwich to retain their funds that we approved and apply for another program called Partnerships Enabling Middle Mile, PEM, PEMM, Partnerships Enabling Mile. We'll say that 100 times. To date, these three towns, Wiscasset has appropriated 183,200, 65,000 from Dresden, and 225,000 from Woolwich. Consolidated's also got their eyes on Edgecombe, Boothbay Harbor, and Southport, which is what they wanted to loop in with this application with the Woolwich, Wiscasset, Dresden crowd, and we've communicated to them that we would like to see Whitefield, Waldoboro especially, and North Noblesboro, which is adjacent to that. Waldoboro's options is what we're hoping will happen. To jump in on the Partnerships Enabling Middle Mile program, the level of funding used by Wiscasset, Dresden, and Woolwich was $150 per housing unit, less than 100,000 for the Wiscasset and Dresden County match. So we discussed it with Max and I believe Bob and John, we came up with the figure of 2,773 housing units in Waldeboro, which obviously isn't current because that's probably 2020 census, but we'll leave it at that. Multiplied by the 150 per unit, that came to a total of 416,000, excuse me, minus the 100 from Lincoln County. So for a figure of $316,000 as a recommended match from the town of Waldeboro. Right now, we're waiting for till April 30th for MCA to come out with more project scope for the application. And their schedule is to have awards out by September 1st and contracts signed by the end of the year. Waldeboro's also obviously got other options, work with other ISPs, and we've discussed with a couple people in this group that any other ISP coming into Waldeboro, such as LCI that's in downtown, they've had to pay pole attachment fees to get onto those poles, which is anywhere from $400 to $550 right now per pole at 40 a mile. And if there's 100 miles of road in Waldeboro, you're looking at 1.6 minimum for another company to come in. That's usually what keeps the competition at bay. So your incumbent phone carrier being consolidated, that's the cheapest option to go with, and that's what the state's advocated for towns to work with their local incumbent providers. Currently, we've got an estimated, this is Consolidated's number, 276 households in Waldeboro that qualify as unserved or no connections. And pretty much aside from hoping LCI will build to them or Spectrum will build to them, they're gonna want money too. So that's the status quo at this point. Trying to think if we have any more firm numbers to give. Nobleboro's putting in about 50 to 65,000. Edgecombe, we're hoping to get about 24. I don't anticipate getting much from Booth Bay Harbor, Southport. The company intends on building privately there, but including them in the grant project as a whole, just to boost the numbers. They're not really eligible for a whole lot of grant funding for that area anyway. But yeah, I'd love to answer any of your guys' questions and heave ho, because I'm not the company, so I'm here to help. Give it to you honest.
Go ahead, Bob.
I've got a bunch of questions, if it's all right.
You start shooting, Bob.
Okay. A little bit about yourself, Evan. How did you get involved with this?
I just kept showing up. I started grad school 2021, was interning with Matt Lutkiss and Dan Riscotta, and they said, hey, you need to pick a project for this internship. Ended up being broadband, and just have lived in Lincoln County my whole life, and now we're 3 years down the rabbit hole and hoping to get a win this year, hopefully.
And who would each town actually be contracting with Fidium if this were to go forward? How does Fidium handle the relationships?
So Fidium would be or Consolidated would be the grant applicant.
Okay,
The towns and the county would be the partner, and then would sign individual contracts for disbursement of matching funds as the project went along. And I know that was a question that Julie sent me last week, and we're still trying to pinpoint in this particular program what the disbursement schedules have been like. So it's usually been about half of the match about 1 year in, and then half at the conclusion of the project. So they usually get these for 12 to 18 months, but all the time they get an extension because that's where we're at.
is a performance bond required of Consolidated?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'll have to get
Okay,
back to you on that one.
I think needs to be answered. They,
Sure.
So this could potentially be done over 2 years then, 2 cycle, 2. I don't
Yeah,
know.
hopefully the contracts and awards will be signed by the end of the year,
Mhm.
and construction beginning in 25. And then, yeah, they've got like a year plus after that. Usually the contract terms are for a year, but like I said, with the
But it's gonna
extensions.
cost more than 416,000.
Total, yeah, definitely. These,
So what? Who's gonna get it? I mean,
how do you mean?
so the whole town of Waldeboro is gonna get
Yep, universal coverage. If it's not universal coverage, I wouldn't encourage
all 20.
you guys to sign on.
2,700.
316, because we get that $100,000.
Right, but I
Yeah.
mean, still, at a 416,000, they're gonna do the whole town.
Yep.
Wow.
They're asking for between about 4.9 and 5 million in a grant from the state.
Mhm.
They The county's 1.3 plus whatever our total is up to now. Whatever it is, 500,000-ish with the other towns involved, a little over 500,000. So we're looking to put together 2 million total from county and towns.
If I could just add a little comparison context, about 3 years ago, we applied with Spectrum to try and get Finntown Road, just the stretch of Finntown between Friendship and Warren to get connected. That's about 30 homes. That was, I believe, something where we were asking for 100,000 from the state to do the grant for us. And that's just 30 homes. This is 3 times.
I know, that's why I asked,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I question that. Is because you're, some of these small projects that we've done have been ridiculous priced. And they've
Yeah.
been around and saying.
Definitely, definitely when they were doing,
It just didn't sound right, it just didn't sound
Yeah.
feasible.
But the other part, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in my assumptions, but the state has wanted to see more larger scale projects as opposed to just the 5 or 6 homes now
Right.
at this point, which is
Yeah.
what we were trying to apply for years ago. Now it's go big at this point. That's just my assumption from what they're doing with grant.
the last of those, 1 road, 2 road projects were in like 2020 under Connect Main, and then under
Mhm.
MCA, they've basically been wholesale municipalities for the most part.
So even, this is gonna run fiber even up like Storm Mountain and these.
This would be everybody. That'd be the idea.
Well,
Have they talked to you at all about a density standard?
No, because they don't operate that way the way cable does.
How do they operate?
Well, because
Is it a matter of where their telephone lines were or are,
typically,
and they just tie onto that?
yep. So that's the, say it again,
That's good.
that would be good. If you've got any more softballs, keep them coming.
Okay.
You mentioned some other competitors to Fidium.
Yes,
You didn't mention Red Zone, but certainly LCI and Spectrum are there. The pricing that they're talking, the monthly pricing is astoundingly low, but it's an introductory rate. Do you anticipate that those folks are going to go out of business because they can't compete at those rates? And then
Spectrum or LCI or all of the above.
Well, what is their rate?
anyone, is this basically gonna put these people out of business?
Well, I think with like the Spectrums of the world, it'll force them to compete for the first time. I mean, if they don't cut their prices in half within 12 months, they're gonna become the new DSL level of service compared to what will be available under fiber.
I'm a little concerned, when you have a monopoly, they can set prices. It is Consolidated now regulated under public utilities, the state public utilities.
As a telephone company, yep,
As a telephone company, they are.
Yep.
So they would have some
they would still be the,
regulatory authority over rate setting.
I don't know about fiber internet, no, probably not. That's all been debated and they haven't come up with anything federally to allow the states
I'm
to.
just wondering whether we're walking into a trap here where
Well, I tell you,
the rates go to $250
Yeah.
a month after 3 years.
your concerns are definitely warranted, but right now what you have is you've got a spectrum that can do that anytime. That isn't regulated or untouched. So with this situation, you bring in the very first actual competitor to Spectrum that Waldeboro's had in 30 years. So that's what I can tell you from that. Right now, you have a situation where that very thing can happen, and I think most people feel that it does. When you ask everybody what they pay for cable internet and then between a bundle and everything else.
Just my concern is about a monopoly and,
Yep, I think this
we have
would reduce-
monopoly Power.
yeah, I think this would reduce the monopoly you already have, for sure.
But the pricing is so attractive.
Yep.
I think,
Have they given you what their pricing would be?
They, the FCC's just mandated that all the ISPs above a certain level, which includes Consolidated, put out, broadband information facts of what their plans are. So I don't have it right in front of me, but,
I think Ruben shared those.
yeah,
Yeah,
Ruben's,
that's what I thought. I thought
Ruben
I
shared
saw
'em.
Ruben, like 40, something.
I think the lowest was about 30.
They've quoted on their website, they've quoted 25 for 100 by 100. and they quoted 45 for 300 by 300.
It wasn't.
I was about to say, Ruben's actually joining on Zoom right now.
Make sure you're speaking low level, so
Oh,
let's
there's
say.
Ruben.
100 by 100.
You say what, 100 by 100, what?
That's megabytes,
Okay.
megabits up and down.
Okay.
Same, it's
It
symmetric.
doesn't mean a lot to all of us. so-
No, sorry, okay, yeah,
You know,
no, gotcha.
And you gotta remember, this is town of Waldeboro. And sometimes when we're talking
I wouldn't know. what it is.
high-speed internet, I've got internet at home, I'm happy with it. Is it fast? Fast enough for me, as well as a lot of people I know, it's fast enough for them. So you start talking all this high-speed 100 by 100 or 200 by 200. What are you talking about? Megabytes,
Megabits.
megabit, okay.
And-
And you don't just get that in Waldeboro, you get that in Bath, you get that in Portland too, so
Yeah,
don't feel
But if
bad.
you're comparing prices, it's important to understand the concept of speed.
Yeah.
You need to know what
Is
you're
there an
getting for your,
easy way to,
there isn't really, I mean, it's a
Well, I'm
very
gonna give you
difficult
an
thing to get
example.
across.
to give you an example, my daughter lived in Dresden. And when she wanted to upload her Shutterfly calendar, most people can relate to uploading photos to a Shutterfly calendar, at least anybody who does pictures. Okay, maybe not.
Probably not me and John.
All right, you're uploading pictures, you wanna send pictures of your granddaughter.
I do that on my
Or
phone.
grandson.
I can do that on my
Okay,
phone.
She tells the story that to upload like 15 pictures took like an hour and a half. She now lives in Waldeboro on Old Augusta Road where they do have fiber.
Fiber.
And those same pictures this past Christmas that, 15 pictures took like 3 seconds. It was great. That was her
Comparison.
comparison of an hour and a half to, 15
Yeah.
seconds of upload speed. So.
And then on the business side of things, there was in Damascotta before this architectural firm had fiber service. They were trying to upload a set of architectural plans online to send to a client out of state. And the upload speed was so bad that it was quicker for them to drive to South Portland and overnight the architectural plans than it was to sit there and just keep staring at the upload forever. And that's when you have cable's maxed out at about 30 megabits upload speed. Whereas fiber is infinite, but right now the top tier that Consolidated offers is 2 gigabytes or 2,000 megabits.
See, that doesn't make any sense to me.
30 versus 2,000
It's
Well,
is the
it's really
major
fast.
It's
comparison.
really fast.
Yeah.
I
What-
was just trying to see if there was something anecdotal that might help. Understand.
Yeah, and Dresden's a good example because originally when we started this in Dresden, there were quite a few loud voices in the room in the back. And they said, well, that ain't gonna happen. And I said, yeah, I've already heard that. And a year later, one of the gentlemen who's a realtor can't sell any of his lots because there's no internet running by any of his subdivisions. So people come, they show up, find out there's no internet, and boom, that land might as well have toxic waste on it. It's useless as far as housing is concerned. So that's what we're trying to alleviate in a lot of places, particularly in Waldeboro, who's got the highest share of unserved locations in the county at this point.
Ruben says I have a different angle.
Yeah, Ruben, do you?
Get in here, Ruben.
Yeah, Ruben.
Absolutely. Numbers are great. And you probably all know that I'm second place to Evan, maybe third place to Bob, but I get real excited about numbers and they don't matter. And here's why. Let's put all this stuff aside about how fast the connection is. Over 2,000 residents in Waldeboro have internet that after their promotional rate, which is most of them, they're paying close to $100 a month for the entry level of service. Once this gets done, and you introduce competition, you're going to reduce their costs by a significant amount, not just on the promo rates that come when this service first comes in, but after that. Additionally, when you get into fiber, again, numbers aside, the things you can do to it without major infrastructure retrofits are of a much greater advantage compared to things like cable. It ages better, it's cheaper to maintain and cheaper to upgrade. And then everything on top of that makes it faster. But the headline here for me is that you will be giving residents an option, a choice. They don't really have that now in any meaningful way. I emailed, I think, all of the select board what looked like nutrition labels that show what different vendors sell for speeds of internet. And everyone's paying between $60 and $100 a month. What you're doing is potentially bringing that number down, but also letting them get higher quality for the same money.
Ruben, that's actually, sorry if I'm interrupting.
Go ahead,
It's
go
like
ahead, go ahead.
No, that was my whole speech. I had to breathe. You go for it.
Yeah, no, but I was going to say, just as you were joining Zoom, one of the things that the select board was curious about was the lowest price that Fidium offered, because we know it's the national price and everything, and we talked about this in private. We talked about this when we initially met with Evan about this. But
Yep.
do you remember how much the Fidium price is? For the lowest here?
Give me a second. I can tell you.
Okay. That's also the joys of having someone right in front of the computer.
Right?
He said, as I am sitting next to a computer.
I was gonna mention that, but
Yeah, you all have phones too, I know.
Yeah, but I have a 40-inch screen, so I can see them all next to each other. He says this, he waits for the stupid thing to refresh. Let's see here.
You must be on something slower, huh?
I have a mere 2 gigabits of connectivity plus my backup cable connection. That's all I can do is upload a DVD in about 30 seconds. All right, so Fidium's pricing is national, like you already said. Their lowest price starts at $25 a month, and I think that's for the first year. And then after that, it goes up to $45 a month. And for those who care, that's 100 megabits both ways. They then go to 300 at $45 a month for the first year, and that goes to 65. Their 1 gig starts at $65 a month for the first year, and then goes to 85. Their 2 gig starts at 85 and then goes to 100. So their 1 gig plan after promo is $4 cheaper than Spectrum's entry level plan.
And I believe LCI's 1 gig plan is
$114 and change, depending.
Yeah.
TDS, that's their rack rate, but as they're signing up people in Warren, they're charging $63 a month as long as you make your payments on time and it doesn't change.
Glad I sat down for you, Ruben.
I talk a lot.
So what else can I tell anybody or John?
You said, where do you get this number, 276 households?
That's what Consolidated provided for a number for me.
And where do they get that? How do they determine that? They look at what
Their
road?
in-house engineers know at least where Spectrum has paid to be on the pole. Doesn't mean that they're not on poles that they didn't pay to be on, but I think that's the number that they've started with. That may not be what the FCC says, which ultimately determines grant eligibility for some of these locations. But that's probably the best working number.
And I'll just add on, we also did our internet survey with LCI very recently, which did say 2,776 homes in Waldeboro. So I don't know what's happened this past year, but that's the number we have. And I'd have to double check, but just short of 300 is what we have for unserved homes, as in don't have the wired internet connection.
Is it because it's not available or they don't want it?
That
Or need
was
it.
my question.
Or
Not
don't need
available.
it?
Not available is how everybody looks at it, whether it's the FCC or their study, it's not available.
Because I know of some houses in the town that there's no cable or anything, and they've got it because they use other vendors.
Yeah.
But Starlink or whatever it's called,
The wireless.
Asteroid.
Yeah.
We use
stuff.
Yep. And those are all good if you live in a place where there isn't any other option, the Starlinks of the world and fixed wireless
Does that
stuff.
include Starlink and everything?
If you have Starlink, it doesn't qualify you as unserved. So if you don't have a wired connection of cable or fiber, then you're considered unserved.
So Starlink is, you could have Starlink and still be considered unserved.
Yeah.
Right.
Based on your location, yep.
Any number of them could have Starlink and
Yep.
I
Sure.
have nobody I know who has Starlink wants it. They'd much rather have the alternative.
you got one right there that's got it.
I have Starlink. I fought for years to try to get some sort of internet.
You
and-
don't have internet other than Starlink.
But.
That's my
But
point.
wait,
Yeah,
Pam,
and
what
all
do you
my
think?
neighbors followed suit. I think everyone on our road has Starlink
And that's because it's your only choice.
on our end, correct?
That's the point. And if you
But
had
we
another
had Red
choice,
Zone.
everybody I know who has a choice does not have Starlink.
Yeah, Starlink's big problem as far as I'm concerned is, you can't, I won't say you can't, it's very difficult to attend Zoom meetings, and this became a real issue during COVID.
Yep.
Because when in between satellites, it has to physically move, and you don't have internet for several seconds. And you miss important parts of the presentation.
Yep.
And I don't know how many price jumps they've had in the last 2 years,
They
but
actually dropped in price.
they dropped this
Sorry.
thing. Well, they
said
went,
were one-
See the
they
competition.
did go up once, I think. So, but they do
Yeah.
have people
One
at a
thing I heard
choke
about
point.
Starlink too is the more people that start using it, the slower it got.
Yeah,
I did hear that.
and that's basically how they all work at some point.
Now they're gonna run these cables wherever there's a pole. And into the houses, it's a customer's responsibility.
Yeah, I don't know what Consolidated will cover, if it's the first 500 feet or the first 250, what their standard coverage is, because these companies are adjusting that 2 or 3 times a year.
So it is gonna be a cost to the homeowner.
If you're more than like 500 feet off the road, then yeah, it's usually $1 a foot aerial, and then if it's buried, it's usually about $2 a
And if
foot.
it's underground, then depending on.
Yeah.
If you're set up for it, doing a pole.
That can be a small barrier, but.
Yeah.
They've been good about working with people Consolidated compared to some of the other companies that I've seen in terms of that. You know, if it's 510 feet, I don't expect them to send you a supplemental for $10.
I'm just curious, because we get a lot of driveways that are long driveways that
Yeah.
come from 32 down towards the water.
Yeah, and that's a common thing around here.
I guess if they live on the water, they can probably afford it, but that's not my call. That's not my call.
You can't be saying that.
Well, you live on it. But you don't live 1,000 feet, 1,500
No.
feet down. Right, anybody,
I want to emphasize one point. And that is that Consolidated owns most of the poles. And that's why it makes so much sense to try to go with them on this kind of thing, because the cost to them is substantially less than it would be if someone else were doing it. And we know that. I mean, we've seen numbers that would, I think, blow us away, what it would cost to lay up
That's why I
all
say
the fiber.
I question the
Yeah, I mean,
460,000.
Now, I wouldn't
Yep.
question that part of it. I'm guessing it's gonna cost them around $28 million. But they're gonna get some of that as grant money.
Yeah.
Some of it we're chipping in, and the rest of it, they're looking at their cash flow. And you look at the cash flow, you just multiply the 2,700 homes by $100 a month. And you can see what they pull in every single year after they've installed the infrastructure. So it is about competition, and we don't have it really, in practical terms here.
And that's the
Right.
important thing, is that everybody around you, you're getting circled in by the minute here, so. Waldeboro, Friendship, and Cushing are gonna be on an island by themselves here, so we're trying to find a way
We
to,
need a part of it.
Waldeboro
We
to
need
get
be
in with the
part of that
rest.
Bigger infrastructure, yeah.
cool beans.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Well, I've got my card here with my email on it, so feel free to
Thank you, Ellen.
reach out with any questions that come up. They usually come up in the shower or at midnight. If you think that's something you wish you'd ask.
Thanks, Sal.
Absolutely.
Public hearings, any adjustments to the agenda? No?
I'd like to add an adjustment for new business 11.1, committee nominations.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Is there okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? How many do we have, John? Just
3.
Any other adjustments? Seeing none? Okay. Citizens' comments. Step right up.
Now that you made me wait, I have more comments. First comment, yes, there are people on Flanders Corner Road who don't have decent internet. So, yeah, it sounds exciting. And I just wish I had been smart enough to ask that when we bought the house, because it was a real shocker when we first moved in, and having come up from Massachusetts, I didn't realize that we weren't going to be able to buy internet service. That's crazy. Okay, so that's a good idea. But I wanted to comment on housing because that's my thing. I wore my shirt today. I'm part of Community Housing Improvement Project, which some of you probably know. And I'm also an owner of an Airbnb. So I wanted to make some comments here. One, as you were saying, the lack of affordable housing is just a really big issue. And we deal with it with CHIP, you know, we're always helping people. The majority of the people that reach out to us are either in two categories. They're either fixed income elderly that really don't have the money to do fixes or even pay their utilities bills anymore. And the other group is huge families, you know, and I understand you want to do something with the ADUs, but I just don't see them serving the population that I know right now exists. Now, whether it would help bring more people in, that I can't answer, but I'd like to see other things done. One thing, as far as being a property owner who's faced with the issue of, do we rent or do we do Airbnb? It seems that most people think, well, the big decision is, boy, you're going to make a lot of money with Airbnb. Well, we have not had a profit yet. And I mean that every year our taxes show a loss on it. So you're not making a ton of money. So why would you do it then? It's so much work. We have to clean continually and all that. But the reason we did it was it's safe. They give us $1 million insurance against having anyone wreck our place. They give us, they do all the booking. They have I'm told, because some people were working for them, very good algorithms to ensure that crazy things don't happen and that people who shouldn't be renting it aren't renting it. They collect the money for us, so we know we're not going to be stiffed. And there's if you have never used them, you might not know, but there's this evaluation where we evaluate every person who comes in and they evaluate us. So everyone stays honest, you know, and in all the time we did it, which is only 2 years, we only had one kind of bad experience. So I really want to use any form I can to put this in people's minds that what we really need is to have something like this for regular tenants, because then that would really help. You know, people would say, well, you know, okay, I will go out and rent out my, you know, garage, and I won't worry that I'm going to get stiffed. I won't worry that someone bad's going to come in. And I know the town has an ordinance even where landlords can be kind of blamed for bad behavior on the part of their tenants. And yet landlords don't always have the okay to go into eviction. You need to follow certain rules. So it's a very difficult situation, and I just want to have everyone aware of that so that you think, and I'd really love to approach this sometime at the state level, because I don't think the towns are rich enough to do it. But it would be great if we had some kind of backing like that for regular landlords, because I think you'd see things open up a lot better than like we do now with the Airbnb. The other comment is, if you decide you're going to go after vacation rentals and say, oh, we're going to get rid of them. First of all, I think you need to know how many you're talking about in the town and whether it's really impacting the kind of thing that a normal long-term rental people would do. Because the kind of place you'd stay in a vacation rental for a little cottage, maybe for a week, isn't a good place that you might want to stay in, especially if you had a family. So I think you'd have to really, if you decide to go that route with an ordinance, I think you really need to think about that. You know, what are we saying? You can't use the vacation rental when it's something no one would want to rent full time anyway. And the other thing about that is you have to think about tourism because it's one of Maine's big businesses. If you don't have a place for anyone to stay, they're not gonna come. And last year I read it was $8.6 billion for the state of Maine. And it came down to 2617 something for each individual in Maine. So tourism isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I understand, again, I'm there with you on the housing. It's a disaster. But also just to share with you, and I had the whole long speech and I was told it was too long. But by someone sitting at the table over there. We have, since we rented on Airbnb, we have had tourists, yes, but we've also had a lot of other people who came in. People use Airbnb as that month-long rental maybe, that they need to find housing somewhere else. People moving into the area use it. We had one person come because he was filming a documentary on Elvers. We've had people coming to visit grandma while she was in hospice for the last time. It's kind of sad, but I was glad we were there for these people. We've had, again, people up for funerals, people up for weddings. So when you say vacation rentals, I think you need to be careful. If someone's renting like we are on Airbnb, you get a wide group. And since no one's falling asleep yet, I will tell a little bit of that one story. But we saw someone who was asking on Facebook. They were desperate. Their sister was coming here from India and starting work as a nurse at the Warren Penitentiary Facility. And she was starting in a week and they had no place for her to stay because the sister who was trying to find a place for her was in New Jersey, which it was impossible to do this long distance. So I said, oh, I'll call her up and see. So we called her up. We had other bookings for the rest of the year, but I said, look, we can rearrange this so we can give you a month and a half to find housing somewhere else in the area since you need it tomorrow. And they said, yes, they would do that. And, but they needed a certain low rate. So in Airbnb, you can lower the rates and it does go down, by the way. If people stay for months and months, the rates go down. So we lowered the rate considerably so that they could afford it. They came in from India. It was a couple and their son. And it was really good for them to not have it be like a hotel or something, because then we were there, we could help them. We could drive them places to get a rental car. We could do things with them. We got the son enrolled at Madomic at first. And then when they found a place to live, they moved to Rockland. And we've kept in touch. And just the other day, and this was my punchline, so just the other day, it turns out he was valedictorian at the Oceanside High School. So when you say, oh, we're going to get rid of these rentals, just think about that. You might be getting rid of something you don't want to get rid of. Okay? All right. So I've had my say. I feel good, except for one last thing. When are you going to take the posting off the road? I have all this stuff that's coming in from.
They're
No, it's still on our sign.
Dirt roads should be soon.
I'll trust you. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Hello, I'm Rebecca Waddell. I live in North Waldeboro. I'm really in favor of fiber internet. And I want to say that even the lowest tier of fiber is faster than my Spectrum. We have 3, sometimes 4 people working from home. We have to schedule our Zooms around each other, even with Spectrum, because we're all always dropping our Zoom. And I am one of the people that when Waldeboro had its cable contract, whenever that happened years ago, they didn't make sure that everybody was served. So for the longest time, I've been in the black hole of Waldeboro. And I had asked Spectrum, then Time Warner, to bring it to my house. And they said, well, it would cost $2,500, but we won't do it. because it will degrade service to everybody on Kastner Road. So finally, 6-7 years ago, they agreed to do it for $6,000 out of my pocket to bring it 600 feet to my house. It's a lot better than, I'm paying $120 a month for it. This last storm that we had, I didn't have internet, I didn't have power, I didn't have cell service, and I have voice over internet for phone, so I didn't have that either. I had nothing, which was a little bit unnerving for me because usually, at least if you have a landline, you keep it. But the other thing that's a real plus about fiber is unless you rip it off, you still have it whether there's power or not. So people aren't cut off. And I had an issue because there was someone I was trying to reach. And I live on one end of Waldoboro, she lives on the other end of Waldoboro. I wasn't going to go out in the storm because it's 20 minutes on a good day to drive there. It was going to be an hour to get there. So I think it's really important. I also have a son who's autistic. He will not drive because for various reasons, he doesn't see well enough to do it, but he works from home. And there are going to be people like that. When my other son came back, he could work remotely for a company in Washington, D.C. and make 3 times as much as he was going to be paid by a local business. So it keeps the opportunities open here. I was lucky I sold a website and I used it to pay to bring the internet to my house. We're still the last one. And so, and if the power goes out on Kastner Road, which it does a lot, we lose internet. So anyway, when I see 316,000 for the entire town to get it because they own the poles, I'm like, please do it for us. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for your time.
Ruben did make a comment in the Zoom chat. It was just to listen to Rebecca because she's super smart.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Select board comments, Bob?
Couple, just a reminder that on May 3rd, we have a meeting here of the Transfer Station Committee, Cushing, Friendship and Waldoboro to talk about our $1 million budget for garbage. And whether people think it's a problem or not, and whether if they do think it's a problem, what we might do about it. Great Art for Great Reads is committee from the library. They're actually going to do it again this year. They're getting together to get it organized. So keep your eyes open for announcements about that. And the WBA again is having a meeting on August 29th at Kenshin Ranch, which is where Deb Toulouse used to have her practice, kind of close to the Waldoboro, the old German church cemetery. It's going to be a nice meeting. Interesting.
What day is that on, Bob?
Sorry?
What day is that?
April 29th. It's always the last Monday of the month from 5 to 7:30. Well, businesses are encouraged to come and attend, and other people too.
John?
Only thing I have is, last week, was our final meeting. I just want to thank those members that were here for the budget committee. Just letting the public know, keep a good look at what we did as far as the budget between the select board and the budget committee. And also, if you haven't been following the RSU, the school district has finalized their budget. And that'll be going out to the public hearing in May as well. So we can vote on that.
On the 14th, I believe, the public hearing.
And I believe the RSU, it's right around 4.5% increase versus 10, which it originally was. They worked hard at it too, dropping it, bringing it down.
It's the 14th at 6:30 at the high school.
That's the RSU, is the 14th, right? And ours is the 9th, 7th.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we moved our meeting.
We moved our meeting so that people could go to the school too.
Okay, I'll write that down.
Is that it? Is that it, John?
Yep.
Mike? Good. Will?
John said, I just want to thank the budget committee. I also want to thank all the members of all the other committees who volunteer their time. Waldoboro was really lucky. We have people that lived here all their lives serving on the committees, and people that have just moved here that want to get involved and really appreciate their time invested in this town. So.
Manager report.
I have a couple of things. Back in December, we had a gentleman, Mr. Cross, who lives on Main Street, come in and ask about a potential speed zone, reduction on 220 South. Right as you come over from Moody's, you'll notice it's 35, and then you hit downtown, and it's 25. At the request of the town of Waldeboro, the MDOT did a speed zone review for that section of 220, and it actually went from almost right before the Historical Society, actually north to Higher Road. So they did that whole area that's labeled as 35 miles an hour. And they determined that that 35-mile-an-hour speed zone is appropriate for the area. So there will not be a reduction in the speed in that area. And I did call Mr. Cross yesterday and personally let him know. He thanked us very much for requesting the speed zone be looked at in that area. He says there's still an issue with him pulling out, that when he backs out of his driveway, he always has to be extremely careful because people are zooming by. But again, I looked on the MDOT website today. There's a whole how speed zones are determined. There's a whole video on it. It's about 15 minutes long. If anybody's interested, you should go on the Main DOT website under speed limits, and it will explain to you how all of that is determined. I also received a notice from the Main DOT that they will be paving. And this will be from Route 32 north from the light into Jefferson. So that will be something that will be good. Also, I believe they have to repair one culvert there. But the big news, on April 30th, the four-way stops, we got the tentative date today, and they're a go for April 30th. The four-way stops will be installed at Old Augusta Road and Route 220. And then on May 2nd, the all-way stops, the four-way stops will be installed at Manktown, 235 and Chapel. And I just want to bring this up because one of the first meetings that I attended as your new town manager in it was May of 2017. Mr. Bob Moran was at the meeting, and he stood up and he talked about how dangerous the Old Augusta Road and 220 intersection was. And he had till the day he honestly, till the day he died, he wanted that intersection made safer and safer. And it was something that summer, all of the select board back then met up on 220 and Old Augusta Road with the MDOT. And he would be very pleased to know that the four-way stop is being installed. And he's passed on, but I know he's looking down and smiling about this. That's all I have.
Consent calendar. Would you like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Like that motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Good. All right, new business. For you, John.
We have 3 applications for boards, and we've interviewed the 3. I'll talk about the first one here. Jessica Sproul, she is requested to be part of the Recreation Committee. Jessica is born and raised here in Waldeboro, been here her whole life, worked here, educated here. She runs a family business. Kids have been involved in sports, and she's been involved in sports, and I certainly think that she'd be a great asset to the Recreation Committee. One of her biggest focus is to help generate ideas to have recreation for the older people. As well as the kids, of course. But you want to talk about those?
Sure. And we have 2 applications to be on the Waldeboro Origins Committee. The first was kind of there was a lot of confusion reigning because She's currently a resident of Brunswick, but she owns property in Waldeboro. And we were unsure whether she could sit on the committee. As it turns out, since she is a taxpayer in Waldeboro, she is eligible to sit on the committee. John and I interviewed her today. We found her very personable, very, well, she's actually a music historian. That's I didn't name her, Carolyn Bryant Sarles. She's a music historian, so fits right in and fits right in for Conrad as well. Perfect. I recommend her highly. Immediately after that, I met with Lucy Nutter, who is a medical doctor. She's a psychiatrist. Recent migrant to Waldeboro, to Maine, as am I, as is as is Michael. Also, we felt, both John and I felt that she would also be a very good addition to the Waldeboro Origins Committee. So I guess I would accept a motion to accept one or all of these people from the board.
I move we accept every one of them with thanks.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
Any discussion?
I'll just quick add about the two applicants for the Origins Committee. Both these ladies, they certainly have the attitude and desire to help promote and educate people on where Waldeboro came from. And with the help of this new committee, we can start doing that as we can get folks out there. And actually, Carolyn's actually a member of the Waldeboro Historical Society as well. She's already been working with the Historical Society for a number of years, even though she's only here in the summertime. But both of them, their belief is people need to know where they came from before they know where they're going. So that's why they want to get the word out to people what Waldeboro is all about and where it came from.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Old business, Fox's House.
Yes, this came up at our last meeting. I believe it was John who requested that it, so he requested to be on the agenda this time.
Could have been.
So I don't know what if we have questions, if Max wants to give an update on where he is with the, he has good news.
Do I go all the way?
Could you please come on up, since you are here? Max, we were not expecting Max to be here tonight. But he's up in his grant scheme.
Yep. And I had to take off the red fleece that I always have so that you didn't have two bearded guys with a red fleece up today. So linking, I'm referring to Evan. Okay. Anyways, last week Lincoln County did award Waldeboro $2,500 to do an asbestos test for the site. Did reach out and try and get some estimates, including New Meadows Abatement down in West Bath, who, funny enough, they looked at my house actually for asbestos, but they don't do studies, but they did give us some good referrals. So far, the prices I've gotten is about $1,500, and that's fully covered by the grant, and that would be testing the whole site for asbestos. So I don't think the town's going to have to spend too much money on the asbestos study itself. And then we have about $1,000 left over for abatement. So that's the asbestos update.
There's grants out there though to clean the asbestos out if they find asbestos.
Yes, and I'd have to, well, and that part of that would go into what we're going to do with the property. So I'm reserving it to waiting until we hear what the price is to clean up the site for the asbestos, because there might not be that much other than the siding. There might be a lot more than I would like to think of, but I want to reserve until that.
Well,
If they're gonna do a study of what the potential or the contamination could be, does that mean they'll write up an RFP so that we can put it out for bid to clean it up?
I can ask them that, but that probably will bring up the price.
Well, if it's 2,500 and you're.
Right, we
There
have
might
the
be an
1,000, we
opportunity.
have the money left over to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm doing as best as I can with this stuff right here. Thank you. Thank you. I thought I got a good one. Thank you. Thank you.
Miss that one.
Blaming the M&Ms on that one?
Did you say you were holding off on getting the study done?
No, I got one estimate and I need one more study. I want to see how much I can get for comparative prices. I got one for 1,500 and I'm gonna get someone to come down to give me a second price.
And when can we expect this to be done?
Should be done by, well, maybe 3-4 weeks, because I have to book someone out 1 week in advance and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks to have the study, the test done. And that was just the person I talked to today.
So
Go ahead.
no, you go.
No, I'm done.
No, you go ahead. So I just, in speaking with John Daigle today and Will, the other thing that John Daigle just wanted to remind us of is, his concern is what's under the asbestos siding. And also just to bear in mind that the costs are, you know, sometimes it's very costly when you go, the remediation could be costly when you take it down. And also, there's also ways that you could, if you're keeping the building, that there's ways to abate it. There's different ways to abate it. So if you were keeping the building versus taking the building down.
Yeah.
So his thought was, we need to find out
What there is first.
what there is first.
And that's something that I should be able to have done by Memorial Day at this point. I just want to see what the second company is going to have for a price so that I just know. That's it.
Could we have New Meadows? I know they actually do abatement.
They do abatement.
testing.
They don't do the testing.
Could we call that?
John's raising his hand.
Since our last conversation earlier, we kind of talked in conversation, I've confirmed, just have them give you a quote to do the abatement. And they do the testing as part of their quote.
I'll call them again and ask about that.
But they could, like, maybe they could just come and give us a price for abatement, not even testing, just the abatement.
I'll ask them for the.
At least then we're further ahead. Even if they say, no, we wanted to get tested first, at least then we're further ahead.
They'll do the testing when they do the
Right.
abatement.
I see what you're saying.
That's how they do it. Cause
Okay.
in my company, that's we demo houses. They'll come in, if we suspect there might be asbestos or something that's bad, they'll come in and they'll look it over, they'll test it real quick and then they give us a
But
price.
it wouldn't hurt to
abate.
have, maybe call now and have the Lakeside and them just give us a quote. Maybe we could get those quotes now.
Lakeside said it would be at $3,000, and so the company that New Meadows.
No, I didn't mean for the testing.
For
I meant
abatement.
For the actual physical abatement.
Okay.
Perhaps they would already, even without the testing, give us a price for the abatement, the actual physical abatement. Am I clear?
So I understand is Lakeside wanted to have it abated before they would demo it.
Lakeside didn't put in an estimate for demoing. That was like Ford Enterprises in Hope. They gave us they said they do it for 54,000, but the town has to handle the abatement.
Right.
Lakeside is who did the abatement at 8th grade. That was just a company that
We just asked them for a price on doing a study of the building.
Well, I'm just concerned we need to be methodical about it. I think it's wise to get a price to define what the problem is first. How much do we have to abate? And then go out, figure out what it's gonna cost to do it. Now, you have one quote,
Yes.
and they haven't done an analysis of the amount of contamination that's on there. I feel John's frustration. I'd like to get the answers. And I do feel that if you're gonna talk to somebody about it, they need to give us an agreement that's signed and written up, and we know what we're getting for our
That's
money.
what the quote would be.
Okay, as long as it's a binding quote and we could sign on the bottom line. And it meets with the grant amount. I mean, it's not more than the grant.
Right.
But then we also need to get a decent, reliable bunch of quotes to demo it, if that's the course of action we decide to take.
Well, remediate it. We have to remediate before we do everything.
Okay, fair enough. So there's either a, yeah, remediation. Thank you, I stand corrected.
That's all, that's the only update I have. Just saying, we have the grant for us looking at the asbestos and the price I have for it. That's it.
You want a second? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we typically get 2 quotes.
Yeah, I mean, the 1,500 I'm saying right now, that's the person just looking at it, just knowing the building. The person who gave me that estimate actually did the asbestos removal for Sylvania before that building was demolished. And so he's familiar with the building that we're looking at and said, yeah, worst case, it's 1,500 so I can get a thorough review of the whole place, but it could be lower than that. And then the other company, they're gonna do I'm just working out a time for them to take a quick look at the site, and I'll call New Meadows again to talk to them about that.
Anything else? We'll move along, that's it. Yes. Next item on the agenda is something for the next meeting, any items?
Would you like a department head or another report from a committee?
Well, next meeting, we have the public hearing, right?
Oh, for
On the
the,
warrant.
for the warrant.
Then we gotta do,
Oh, is it that?
that's,
Oh, it's,
we got the public hearing.
we're at the end of April, never mind.
So,
Yeah, that's gonna be, I
Lost
think
track of
that could be pretty lengthy.
yep, all right, so that'll be on the agenda anyways.
Okay, I'm sorry, I totally spaced on that.
That's May 7th.
So maybe we won't,
Okay.
Just for a point of information, are we gonna do something with the study that was done for the renovations for this building?
Yes, I'm waiting on the RFP.
So he's doing the RFP.
Yes,
Fantastic. So maybe that'll be ready by the time we're,
I would love for the
Yeah.
HVAC RFP to be done, and John and Will sat down and reviewed it. I don't know, John, did you have a chance? John Blodgett? I think you did, you emailed. me.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Yeah, looking crazy there.
so we'll just wait for the RFP for the.
Yeah, I think it should be done shortly.
Well, I guess would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn and go into Board of Assessors?
make that motion.
Second. All those in favor? Okay. So I'm just leaving the recording and then going.
Sure.
Sorry, now. So May 2nd.
All right, there.
She's not here. No, I'm good.
Okay. Always welcome.
I know, Abden will be.
It's true. Yeah.
No, I'm good being me.
Interesting person.
See it now, I think I can feel it.
Thank you're welcome. You don't mind shutting that off, you know how, right?
I'll figure it out.
Mike meeting, real meeting.
No citizen comments here. Consent calendar. Regular meeting minutes for 2/27.
You've signed them.
We signed them already.
Make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Official actions.
We have 5
folks that have asked for exemptions, and then we've got an executive session on a mobile home for a poverty ban. The first two are Midcoast Conservancy. They've picked up 2 additional pieces.
Is this square footage?
No,
Or
it's
is that
acreage.
that's the acreage, 76,000 acres?
No, it should be, that's the
Oh,
value,
Oh, okay,
the 161.5.
okay.
They had applied for this one last year, but it was on the market for sale, so we tabled it, and then they sold the house in 11 acres and kept the back land with a walking path.
It's the one down on Friendship.
So it's back land in between.
Yep.
Friendship. That other road.
Pintown.
Been down, there you go. And then the other one is 49 acres up at Clary Hill territory up on the Jackson Road. They got paid 202,500 from Coastal Blueberries for another piece up there.
We vote on these individually?
That's the same. They're 2 different properties, I guess, if you want to vote on those 2, or you can do it individual, whatever you pleasure.
And the rec means that that's something you're recommending.
Yes, those are.
We'll take a motion to accept those first 2.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
So we're gonna be 76,000?
They're gonna be exempt next year, so there'll be no tax on that. Next year, this year it was 76,000 in value.
Value, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is their,
But they have the pilot thing, they came in a little.
They
tax.
pay 5%,
I wonder if they did, yep.
yes.
What's Midcoast's plans for acquiring more land? You know, when we give exemptions for Midcoast, you know, that increases the property tax and the rest of the people in the town. Are they looking to acquire more land?
All they can get would be my assumption.
You ought to invite them, to come talk to us about it. Jim Trumbo would come down here.
You know, the whole housing thing
Oh, yeah.
versus open space preservation, that's a real issue.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, taxes too. But they are making payments in lieu of taxes.
They pay on their office on Friendship Street.
Okay,
They pay on one of their Blueberry properties. They always have. They have it in farmland. And I believe there's some crops being up at the Sammy Cohen property, I'll call it, out behind there. That was that acreage. And then this was Blueberry land. So question whether those should be under farmland and not totally exempt would be a question you could pose if they would pay a little more on them. It's not a whole lot more, so. Or just we exempt them because they open it to the public and don't discriminate. Anybody can go.
what's the rate for land that's in tree growth
The rate is like $320.
versus what,
We're only at 500 now
500 an acre?
on backland. We hope to change it next year, go to 1,000 or more. The other thing I understand is the open space, even if they were an open space. Supposedly there was legislation that passed that has a new formula there instead of a percentage off the value, particularly the big properties down on the saltwater that have conservation easements on them, but they're still owned by the property owners. Is the proposal was to double the tree growth rates and then give them 55% off, so they'll go to tree growth rates, basically. And that's supposedly gonna be huge. I don't know where the stabilization came through and there was a backlash from the assessing community and it got wiped out, so whether the same will happen. Last year, they changed the farmland penalty to the tree growth penalty and everybody screamed and got it back, the 5 years back taxes, so. They do a lot of things at the last minute up there and then it's like, now let's get real and go back to what it should be.
It's probably something I should get more involved with since I own 125 acres.
The big thing supposedly is up north with the open space is to make it the carbon footprint. They don't want any vehicles whatsoever in that carbon footprint. And under this who's pushing the open space. And it would be walking only, no ATVs.
No ATVs or snowmobiles.
No.
What about tractors?
No. Trucks, no. So it's gonna be a back and forth.
What if I have an electric ATV?
Should
They make
work,
'em,
right?
They make them.
Should work. But I'm sure they would come and talk.
Yeah, they should ask them to, and then they'll come.
No, this is hitting me in the pocketbook.
There's two sides to every story, but you need to hear the other side too.
It doesn't matter. They bought the land, they own it. It's open to the public. We use it frequently. It's a minimal amount of tax. You know, we've made the motion.
All right,
Yeah, and
call a
it's
question.
seconded too.
Motion's been moved and seconded in discussion. Call a question. We gonna vote?
Yeah.
You wanna skip Cakewood for a bit, move down to the stepping stone housing and the last two. They purchased what was Lois Gratham's place. It's a mobile home, little house. They renovated the house. And then they purchased the place up at Winslow's Mills, Mr. Thompson's, double wide. And hearing through the grapevine, I don't know a lot about these, but I believe it's similar. You get housing for a year to step you to another, and then somebody else comes in.
So this is a nonprofit, 501c3.
Everyone's a 501(c)(3), but yes, it's a.
Yeah.
That they'll give to everyone. That's not a problem. The Lois Graffin property was 200,000 with the brand new house they put there, and it's 116 for the double wide. Apparently,
And they don't pay anything in lieu of taxes, do
they have not. It's the first time they've been exempt. They're fairly new.
So not really. I mean, Kay probably knows more about them than I do. But they rent out, they own these homes and they rent them out to people who need housing.
Yes.
Okay.
As an intermediate step, you can only be there a year and then you have to find permanent housing.
So they're looking for a tax abatement so that they can keep their rate low to these people.
Help people that are in need with housing.
I'll make a
Take a
motion
motion.
to accept the exemption from taxation for these two nonprofits. For this one, the one nonprofit and the two properties. I apologize.
I'll second the motion. Discussion?
Are these the only two in Waldeboro?
Yes. They have them.
I think they're down there. That Damascotta.
Yeah, I see them in Damascotta too.
Yeah. Must have been Warren and Union, Jim Murphy called, he got the same thing. He's the agent up there, so he was gonna ask a lot more questions, but thought it's pretty much a done deal.
You know, I keep worrying about the tax base. Nibbling away. That's why I wanted to keep the Hofs's house. Just to keep it on the tax base.
Yeah, but that's town property anyway, if we get,
Huh?
that's the town property.
Well, it wasn't before.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to sold. That was what I originally wanted it to be done, was to be listed with a realtor. That was
We tried.
we tried.
Yeah.
All right, moved and seconded. Take a vote.
Moving back up to Cakewood Creative. They bought the Methodist Church in 2022. And just in January got their 503C. They incorporated out of New York, used to be you had to be incorporated in Maine, but obviously they changed that last year. I guess feels it's unconstitutional as long as they're incorporated somewhere. They can qualify. They obviously have no financial records because they just started, if you will. I initially put down not recommended because under benevolent and charitable, the entire property has to be solely used for the purpose, and they are living in the basement. So they have residents there, so the whole property is not being used for a nonprofit. And then he did call back and sent his write-up here to just explain and indicated that, well, he uses that to do the suppers that he puts on, you know, I'm not sure, but he is a chef and he built a huge table apparently that people eat at and prepares the food there and what have you. He did indicate he's put two.
Is this profit making?
No, it's supposed to be not for profit.
I mean,
Maintain the property.
donations,
I have no idea, other than the money,
it's suggested donation.
is anybody, I don't know.
I've never been there,
What the
but
tickets
I've read
cost.
some of their invitations and it seems to me like it's some kind of ecumenical thing, not necessarily organized formally, other than informally as a 501c3. I'd love to see some financial statements from them. And they've been there for a couple of years now. This is
Right.
not something that just popped up. They've been there a while. They've been living there for a while.
Yes, and they've been working on it. So the other issue is they haven't got a change of use on the code end of things. It's a church. They should get a change of use. They have rooms for up to 10 people, performers or whoever to come and stay, put on their performance and then move on or what have you. But there are no financials because they just started, if you will. Prior to this, he was working to,
If not
And-
financials, then like a business plan?
we certainly can ask for more information. And what they have scheduled, he did indicate that a lot of things you get ready for the winter and then it snows and nobody comes or you cancel out. So they haven't had a lot of activity, but again, should have a change of use. The big question from Max and Mark was where in the world they park. There's no parking, zero parking.
Yep.
So,
Well, that's far down from Sylvania, and there are sidewalks there.
yes, so I assume when it was a church, they parked on.
No,
the
they always
sidewalk.
park on the road, street there.
Parked right on the sidewalk.
That was always street parking.
But it's not a church. and it
But
has
Jared,
to be grandfathered.
I think a change of use needs to be done before we do any, we start, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we table this until they get the proper documentation as far as what the building's for and up to code to where it needs to do.
Right now, it's a residence.
I second that motion.
Further discussion?
A few months ago it was for sale, so,
Right, if-
so Max didn't push for the change of use because it was on the market and then it came off and.
Is this the same person?
Yes.
Did it get sold?
No.
No.
Did not
No.
get sold?
No,
Decided not
he
to.
took it off, yeah,
Okay, all in favor?
that was John and Bob, right?
Yeah.
Abel. And then if we could go into an executive session for a poverty.
I was just trying to figure out what section we go into executive session under. I'm looking at the statute. And these are poverty abatements. I don't see anything, unless you can direct me, Daryl, I don't see anything in the statute that allows us to talk about this.
Are we talking about a person?
Yes, pursuant to 36-841 2C.
That's a different statute. Okay. That's totally Greek to me. I've never seen. That's a Maine statute?
Yes, and you have to give a decision within 30 days from the date that you received your completed application.
Okay.
It's an executive, there's no question.
All right, okay. I'll move go into executive session pursuant to section 36-841 2C.
Yes.
Second,
I'll second it.
favor?
Do we wanna have them erase it, or are you gonna pause it? or-
Unplugged.
Yeah, we-
Pause.
We're in a live Zoom meeting. Is there?
Bear with me just a moment, please. I'm gonna hit end. So we're basically done anyway, right?
You have to come out and
Do something?
you can't vote in an executive session, so you have to
Alright.
discuss it, and then when you come out, you have to vote it up or down, whatever you do.
Stop video. I can stop the video and I can mute it. Mute. And Start video.
There you go.
Bingo.
Yeah, you're good
So
to
the
go.
motion is to come out of executive session.
It has been seconded. All in favor?
You were out. Now you need a motion on 24-1, 2, and 3.
So the motion on 24-1, 24-2, and 24-3 is to eliminate the to grant the abatements subject to reimbursement through the Philbrook Fund.
Sounds good.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Daryl.
I move we adjourn.
I second the motion to adjourn.
The
All in
other,
favor?
So can I turn this off? We done, Carol?
yes.
Don't say anything.